It is time now for our second speaker of the day, and that's going to be the topic of NAL-live, the new online journal for open scientific exchange. And presenting will be Professor Diethard Tautz. Diethard, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Before we begin, where are you physically at? What city are you in?
I'm also in northern Germany, in a little city called Plön, not far from Hamburg.
Yeah, I'm outside of Hamburg too. It's a beautiful sea area and a beautiful Schloss. I'm familiar with Plön. Greetings there, excellent. Before we begin, Diethard, I'm going to give a brief review of your summary. It's a very distinguished and long one. I just took out a few of the highlights, okay? And then we can begin. Diethard Tautz obtained his PhD in Tübingen in 1983. As many of our guests, he has a very long and distinguished CV, but I picked out one or two highlights. From 1998 to 2006, he held the chair for the Evolutionary Genetics at the University of Cologne, Department of Genetics. And since 2007, he is director at the Max-Planck Institute for Evolutionary Biology in Plön, Germany, which we briefly discussed about. In 2008, he was elected to the National Academy Leopoldina and became the editor-in-chief in 2018. Today, Diethard will present the concept of a new form of open scientific publication that has the potential to transform the current publication system through putting a focus on updating existing publications rather than closing them after their first appearance. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome Professor Diethard Tautz. And Professor, before we begin, I'm just going to say one thing for our participants. If we could blend in again the QR code for our discussion round. If you'd like to have questions, please go ahead at that code there. Thank you, Malta. Or go ahead and put it into our Q&A tool. And we look forward to hearing those questions in a moment. Thank you very much. Please, sir.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. And actually, the talk before me was a nice run-up to what I'm going to talk about, because at least it addresses some of the issues that were brought up there. So, first of all, Leopoldina, for those who do not know the Leopoldina yet, it's actually the German National Academy of Sciences. It has it's equivalent, for example, to the Royal Society or the Académie Française in France. It is meant to that it advises politics and society on various topics. For example, here's a screenshot from the website saying that they always give all the recommendations to the G7 summits and so on. Leopoldina has a long history. It is one of the oldest academies scientific academies. So it founded in 1652, went through various historic phases. It was located in Halle, so that meant in the former GDR, and only after reunification became again the National Academy for whole Germany. So Leopoldina does a lot of things, but includes also publications. And that's really what I want to talk about today. So the publications, when you click on this, then you can open, for example, the website to NALlive, which will be the focus of today's talk. And here, for example, the latest volume issue that came out is on models of how to model the COVID-19 pandemic. So you get a feeling that there is an idea of giving scientists a word to present basic concepts of science to a more broader audience. That's the usual content of this journal. But what I want to do today is also look a little bit in some history, because that's how we need this to understand how the publication system today came about, really. And so the first scientific journals mark a transition from pure book publishing to publishing collections from different authors. And the concept was developed in parallel in several countries, and presumably the first one that has come out was in France, the Journal des Savants. In England, in the same year, the Philosophical Transactions, which exist until today under this title. And in Germany, by the Leopoldina, which was just founded at that time, or shortly before that time, the so-called Miscellanea Curiosa. And this is, in fact, the first title page from this first issue. Now, the business models that developed around scientific publishing were, there's a good history, and I gave a citation here at the bottom, I take this from. So initially it was run as a barter trade at book fairs, well, often at the Frankfurt Book Fair, for example, and the printed pages of one product were exchanged for printed pages on other products. So basically for those who are interested in learning something new, they changed their printings to others. But that changed relatively fast, and interestingly, it was mostly Dutch publishers who drove this development, among them actually the Elsevier family at that time already, who were the first to change this. So there's a quote in a letter from 1634 that it says, "We are not engaged in printing to exchange books for books, but to make money from them." And so the consequence was, okay, sorry that I have problems with shifting here. Okay, unauthorized reprinting and bad translations were rampant. So predatory publisher emerged already at that time. So, and the problem of all of the first journals that appeared was, of course, to recover printing and paper costs. So there was an invention of establishment of subscription charges. So generally, the business model has now changed today. So mostly with the advent of electronic publishing, so we don't need to recover printing paper costs anymore, but the new costs that arise now is actually mostly quality control and editing. Okay, sorry that my animations don't work as I wanted, but anyway. So birth of the open access idea was then the next step. As you're all aware, so the idea was then to use actually the article processing charges to cover the service costs, and then you can abandon subscription costs. That is currently underway and in many places, but still has not been completed yet. Then we have, of course, also now the preprint concept has been developed, so articles are made available without peer review, so that doesn't cost anything much more. And we have also open review models on which I don't want to go into any details. Just to remark again, with the article processing charges, we have the predatory publishers have come back who really want to rip off the charges but don't give much services. So there is another business model that has also developed, and we heard a little bit about this already yesterday in one talk. That published papers have become the currency for scientific careers. So the positions in financial support depend on the numbers of published papers and their impact factors. And so that has led also to interesting developments. Sorry, some time delays here. Yeah, sorry. So this has led to interesting developments that bibliographic services that were created to support literature searches became converted into bibliometric services that determine actually the currency value of published papers. So it was never intended originally, but that has been converted into that. So scientific publishing has by now become actually a kind of economic game where authors are involved, where peer reviewers involved, publishers involved, and of course, nowadays, all the bibliometric manipulators who make journals more valuable than they truly are. And for open science, that's actually bad news because it leaves very little room for open science contributions from the public. So we are currently definitively in a phase where not only the normal economy, but also scientific economy is first and science is really second. So how can we address that? Sorry. Okay. So the development of publication of the Leopoldina, this is just an overview, and I don't want to go too much into details here. The names have changed a lot, and then there's now a family of journals. So we all are under the name Nova Acta Leopoldina, or short NAL. And I don't want to go into these more traditional journals. They all are platinum open access, so no article processing charges. This is the one that we have conceived new as living documents. And the living documents really imply, as you will see, also a change in culture. And the idea of living documents, we turned them over to a graphics bureau and they produced a little video and they captured it quite nicely, even though you might not completely like the style they used, but it's a very interesting video, and try to play this.
Scientists who sit alone in their study room conducting research hardly exist anymore. New findings are almost always made in the fruitful exchange with an international academic community. Scientific progress is an ongoing, constantly discussed and questioned process. However, articles in books and journals, which are an important part of this exchange, cannot be updated after publication until now. A radically different concept will make this possible in the future: NAL-live. The Leopoldina's new online platform makes it significantly easier to update articles in interdisciplinary scientific exchange. Here you will find the open, ongoing discussion on different views, theories, and new data with the aim of gaining insights. For example, when an author wants to publish an article in NAL-live, of course free of charge, it will be reviewed several times in a peer review and revised by the author. Only when the article is really watertight will it be put online. There, anyone can read it. On the platform, readers comment on and edit the article. The authors or other scientists can reply until the article is eventually revised again. The article lives, evolves, and is always up to date. All articles will remain readable and quotable. The result will be a widely branching tree, a timeline that will document discussion and development and always contain a current document. NAL-live. Living documents, living science in the best sense. Register and upload your manuscript.
Okay, so that's our little video, and it gave you already an idea what it's all about. The living documents is really about commenting and updating. And in fact, the idea is not new. It's a pretty old concept already in book publishing. And I have here the example of Darwin's Origin of Species. So from the first edition to the sixth editions, there were always corrections and responses to readers and public discussion in basically every new edition. And particularly in the sixth edition, there was also a whole list of things that have changed and what exactly has changed and what the comments were. So that's the general idea, and that got somehow lost in today's publishing culture. Living documents, however, have now reappeared in Wikipedia. So Wikipedia basically is such a community-driven effort and to update documents. But the scientific quality is not the primary goal here. So there are many problems. Archiving is unclear. Sources of information are not systematically listed, no peer review, and so on. So it has been a very stimulating and very useful tool, but it's not sufficient for reliable scientific purposes. So let's see. There has been a scientific living reviews have been also created many years ago. For example, living reviews in relativity, and this was also a model for other journals, but they have no commenting function in the sense. They can update the text, but they do not really allow contribution of the public to make major impact on the fate of the paper. So the concept for NAL-live, just repeat it again or look at it. So basically that's the workflow. You have an initial manuscript that starts with a peer review. It's edited by editorial staff and it eventually becomes published. So that's the standard way of all papers nowadays, scientific papers. But then everybody's allowed to comment. There will be, of course, a moderation filter, but the comments, if they have a substance, then they receive a DOI. So the commenter can themselves refer to their comments later on. Then there's responses. Then the authors of the document can adjust their text on the basis of these comments. This can be put back to commenting, or there could be a new version, basically version 2.0, a concept that we know also from software, for example, these updates. So what are the consequences of such a system? One is that authors can change over time. Important is that the elements of the first text can be directly transferred to the next text because there's an open license. And the most important thing is commenters can gain recognized role and can refer to their contributions via DOI links. So why does that change the publishing culture? Now, one important aspect is that active commenting needs to be encouraged. So it is used already in many journals. They're experimenting with the commenting options, but they are funnily rarely used. And why? Because serious comments need some effort, but there's so far no payback for the effort. And that's really what we want to change. When you put the effort into a good comment, then you should also be acknowledged for that. It requires also a new business model because the open access publishers cover, as we saw currently, their costs via APCs on a per article basis. But if you continue the article, then you cannot use an APC easily to collect again a charge just for adding a comment or adding a slight update. So the possible solution is that publishing needs to be based on general service contracts rather than APCs per journal. And that gives actually an interesting new revived role for scientific societies, because scientific journals should then be run by such scientific societies who also provide scientific expertise. Basically what we heard yesterday, it was called the Diamond Open Access Model, but it's also called the Platinum Open Access Model. So no APCs are involved. The service is basically being covered by the society. Yeah. Sorry, but there's a problem with shifting. So anyway, scientific societies should receive public grants to run the journal. That's the idea. And the grants could then, for example, be subject to peer review in regular cycles, for example, every 5 years. And the grant money then can be used to establish own publishing service or to buy it from private companies. But there's also a role for the authors. So authors need a new role for the authors. Authors need to pay continued attention to their publication. So they will directly interact via the public with responding to them, to the comments. And a drawback of this model, I acknowledge that is the currency effect of a single published paper is not there anymore. So it becomes somehow diluted because it is diluted across comments and efforts to rewrite the paper. So we will have to think about how to replace the currency effect on papers, on well-maintained living papers. And that requires also new bibliometric scoring systems. So the challenge is that we have already seen in this system is to get authors actually engaged in their effort. So we still have always to convince them that it's worthwhile to do that. Then, of course, we have to get public commenters to engage in the effort. And financing needs to be sorted out. In the case of the Leopoldina, that has already a grant for publishing, is no big problem. But if you want to implement it for others, you have to look at this aspect. And then we need to develop a payback system that recognizes the efforts of authors and commenters. So one other challenge is actually develop a suitable software first, because we actually do not want to use a ready software solution from any of the companies because of the reasons that the previous speaker said, because they put all sorts of other things into the software which are alien to science. So we actually currently develop a software system in collaboration with a library in Cologne, which will be open source and will not have all sorts of tracking modules included into it. Okay, so the idea is that living documents can put science first in scientific publishing and therefore can create new economic and scientific business model. Oops, sorry. There should be something coming. Yeah, so they can allow and the most important things for open science is actually that it allows non-scientists to directly contribute to science. And that's why I would call it an open science enabled model, where the public can contribute and is also recognized for its contributions, which is currently not the case in normal publication schemes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have many questions already coming in. So I would say due to time, we're going to go straight to those questions. I'm going to go see here if I can get to my questions here. Give me one moment, please. Yeah. Okay, good. So I'll ask if we can have the first question blended up there. And that question would be, would a shift towards quality of scientific publications rather than quantity be a solution? What quality criteria could be used beyond journal impact factor?
Yes, that's a very general question, of course. Nowadays, we have two ways of measuring quality. One is very solid scientific work, but there's another way of how people want to look at quality is whether other people get interested in it. So there's often a triage process in many journals to say, this is a paper that could interest many other people, and that determines quality, not necessarily the quality of the science itself. So the living documents would not change too much in this very general question. But of course, the quality should improve over time by commenting and adding more data.
Good, thank you. Well, we have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll go straight to them. I'll go as many as we can. Scientists change positions and projects quite frequently, especially young scientists. Did you try to address this problem somehow?
That's a nice thing about open access. So basically, nobody knows where you're sitting when you write your papers, and everybody can read them wherever you are. So we are not really addressing the career tracks here.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question. How do you implement versioning systems for large data sets? How are the different resources, text, scripts, models, data sets connected?
We have already good versioning systems for data sets. There are you can deposit data sets and put versions on them. So the NAL-live itself is a review journal, so it's not dealing directly with generating new data, but making reviews of literatures and updating this. But if an original journal that includes also data sets, then of course, yes, you can combine this also with data sets update.
Thank you. Our next question, how well is NAL-live accepted by researchers, for example, authors as well as commenters?
Yes, that's indeed the problem, that we only start to get it established. So admittedly, we have only 3 published articles so far, and the first is now receiving some comments at least. Our main problem is indeed to make a very appealing software, to make it very easy, to make it very tractable and visible. And that's something we struggle currently with, partly also because making a software development with public funding is a pain, because you have to go through so many bureaucratic procedures before you even can start submitting a bit. But we are in the process. So currently, yes, we have a number of papers published, and we start to encourage people to use that, yes.
Great. May I ask, with the development of software, is that here in Germany that you're looking around, or also in other countries?
So currently it's in a cooperation project. Again, we have looked worldwide, and there are lots of little modules that you could put together, but then there is often unclear how they are serviced over time, how they're put together, whether they are truly open source, so that one knows what is in the software and all of that. So we have currently now a cooperation where we want to do one big package with one partner in Germany, yes.
Okay. We have our next question here. How would a living document improve or exacerbate error culture in research?
Oh, it's actually designed to find errors and to correct them, and actually to document errors, which is equally important. It doesn't help to just publish a completely new paper and not say what is wrong compared with the others, but any error detection is there. Yeah, that would definitely be a very important option. And of course, authors have also to adjust to accept that they can make errors and then respond in their comments, yes, I have made an error, even somebody has identified it, and I will correct it.
Yeah, very good. We have time for 3 more questions. Let me go to our next one here. Can we humans cope with ever-going, it says ever-going or ever-growing maybe documents? This is ever-changing scientific facts or knowledge, or does research need finished papers to handle knowledge in a compact form? Good question.
Well, finished papers are an artificial product of publishers because they want to make their business model around finished papers. And that started basically already in the 1600s. I think it's not a question of human comprehension. Of course, you have always a relevant version or the latest version that you can refer to, that you can see as a finished paper, but potentially can go back when you see, okay, authors may have not thought about that. Have they thought about it earlier, or was there already a discussion on something like that? I don't see it as a problem at all that we can continue to work on a single paper, because currently the alternative is, as I said, that somebody publishes an update on one particular scientific problem without saying what has actually changed compared to the old previous ideas around this problem.
Very good, thank you. Let me see if we can get our next question here. I'll see if it comes up. Yes, you can see the question on my screen. It's a little bit small. Could you read the question?
Yes, so basically it says, great idea. Do commentators have to sign their comments? And do you have a critical mass of commentators that the concept is feasible? There have been trials with open comments that were not that successful. That's why I asked. Yes, I agree entirely. First of all, yes, they have to sign, so they have to register. So we currently suggest to use org-ID as registering mechanism so that one can trace the people who are actually commenting. So it should not be an anonymous comment. And yes, indeed, one has to encourage people to comment. And it's actually said that although many journals have experimented with commenters, that it has not happened very much. But as I suggested, it's probably due to, well, first of all, you need a culture that accepts that. And second, the commenters should have some payback, some benefit from going through the effort of writing a proper comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. And our final question, great questions coming in. Are living documents suited for all kinds of articles, or maybe better suited to review articles?
Yes, so we have currently designed it for review articles where we feel it's most easily to implement, particularly when it comes to new authors carrying on, for example, a review. But for original research, it would also in principle work. But for original research, I don't think that authors should change, but they could update their papers, of course. And that would be very helpful because scientific endeavor is a continuous process. And currently you have to write a new paper when you have a new update on your data set. If you have a living paper, then you just could add this.
Excellent. Professor Diethard Tautz, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation, a great Q&A session. We'll give you our virtual applause here. And thank you also to our participants for the excellent questions.